to our third state, third island, Melbourne of New Zealand. Yeah, it's really awesome to see you all here. And it's just a really exciting kind of new stage in the work we've been doing over the last couple of years at Action Station in terms of economic fairness and helping recreate a system that is fairer and kinder and more creative and more joyful for everyone in this beautiful place we call home. So lots of you have been involved with the campaign over the last year and a half. And as you know, we've been focusing a lot on Parliament. We've been focusing on holding politicians to account, holding them to their promises, and pushing for the changes that experts say are needed to switch, change, pull the levers in our economy that will make things better for all of us. And this is election season, so it's a time where people are particularly focused on Parliament. And part of the reason we're really keen to also start this conversation and bring this into the fold is actually social change comes from all places in society. It starts in the household and it extends to the country and it extends to the world. And local economies, local communities getting together and starting to recreate and build something that mirrors more of that better world we know is possible and that better world we are working towards is actually a really important part of the wider social change movement. It's a part of being the solution, but also mirroring and practicing the values that we hold dear and the ideas that we would like to see other people enjoy. So yeah, thank you for coming. I'm really excited about this evening. I feel very lucky that we have Bryan Innes, actually my neighbour. Doesn't have such great internet though, so I made him come over for the purpose of this. And who has been learning and teaching community economics for a very long time, and also Deirdre Kent and Phil Stevens. Phil's also speaking tonight. Deirdre is here. She's written a bunch of amazing books that have been very formative in my thinking, at least around new economy. And Phil Stevens is also going to be speaking tonight, along with Bryan and Chrys Horn, who is just a powerhouse in Christchurch across a number of time banks. And I'm really excited to hear from you. And I can't even see you because there's so many people on the screen, but oh yeah, there you are. Fantastic. And also Sarah from Regland, or Whangaroa Environment Centre, who we had just heard about the toolbank they'd set up and threw out a line, and just really grateful that you kind of took a leap of faith, not really knowing anything about us, that this is worth coming to. So yeah, first of all, massive thank you to the speakers for coming and sharing your knowledge, and to everyone here, and may we go forth and create more beauty in the world. With that, so the format for tonight is we're going to have first Bryan speak on complementary currencies, and then Chrys on time banks, then Phil on savings pools, and then Sarah's going to tell us about the tool bank. And the format will be 10 minutes of them speaking and then about 5 minutes of questions and answers. So if a question comes up for you while they're speaking, do feel free to put it in the chat so we know it's there and waiting. Otherwise there'll be the opportunity to do that. And then at the very end, we've got a bit of an open space, about 15 minutes, to hear about what kind of community economies you're involved with, and also to continue the discussion as a group. And then at the end, we've put together a document with a bunch of different links to the different projects already up and going that you can be involved with. And if you're involved with one that's not on the list yet, then there'll be opportunity to put it in there too. So that will take us through to 8 o'clock. And as we said before, you know, if at any point you need to do anything to look after yourself, don't be shy about putting your camera on, or turn your camera off and going and doing that, you know, but we are recording, the information will be saved, and yeah, whatever you've got to do to look after yourself, it is welcome here. Cool. Any questions about the format? No, awesome. Yes, I will do that, Payal. Okay, here we go. Over to Bryan.
Hello, everybody. I've been a permaculture teacher since about 1993, and ran an eco show in Auckland and Taupo during the earlier part of the century. And I've been a member of Living Economies also for quite a long time, 10 or 15 years. I'm wanting to talk about complementary currency in its general, but also give specific examples. And it's going to be extremely brief, and the purpose is just to let you know what's possible and what has been successful in the past. So I like to define economy, and for me, it's the art of how we manage our exchanges. There are lots of definitions possible, including ecological definitions, which I really like. Complementary currency is one that coexists with other currencies. So we can have lots of currencies operating in an economy, not just one. And they're complementary because they have different purposes. We can have currencies that are used for trading, currencies that are used for saving, currencies that are used for local exchanges. So all sorts of possibilities, and that diversity makes us more resilient. What I want to do is introduce the Egyptians. Some 4,000 years ago, a guy called Joseph, who you may know of as the man in the coat of many colours, was headhunted by the Pharaoh to sort out the problems of Egypt. And the main problem was every 7 years they'd have a drought in the hinterland behind, and the river wouldn't flood and everyone would starve. And so Joseph came up with the idea of having a huge silo, or several of them, with guards, and when the farmers came along with their grain, they would put their grain in the silo where it was safe and get a tablet, a clay tablet that gave the date, the weight of the grain, and details like that. And away they would go, and they could redeem the tablet against their grain. However, they couldn't ever get as much grain back as they deposited in the silo, because some of it was withheld for the 7th year of the flood or of the droughts, and others of it was used for just running the system, keeping the guards fed and rats at bay and all of that sort of thing. Now, what happened was that the people who brought their grain along, which they did every year, so it grew, it's an organic product, they would then trade with their tablet, because they needed charcoal for their fires, they needed blankets on their bedding, was what then enabled the whole economy of Egypt to function. Egypt did have another currency, and that wasn't the local trading and market currency. That was gold and silver, which has always been the international currency of trade. So that was the complementary currency. The two currencies worked together, and Egypt had a stable economy where people built forever. That's why we still have the pyramids and the great treasures that they left behind. They built forever, and they lasted 2,000 years until the Romans basically shot them down by banning their currency of the tablets and introducing coinage, which was gold and silver. And so they have never had the economy again since that time. The good thing to know about their currency is that it encouraged everybody to be trading in the markets, and women were the people who looked after the finances and most of the market stuff. And so women's status in that community was very high. Now I'd like to basically talk about Virgil, which is a little town of 4,000 people in Austria. And after the Second World War, it had been terribly bombed up. Its bridge had been destroyed, its roads destroyed. And in Virgil, they used the model of a guy called Gesell, which was a currency that also lost value over time, just like the value of the Egyptian currency disappeared over time because, you know, you used up your grain, you ate it, or the rats ate it, or whatever. And it was the same with the Virgil currency. It diminished over time, and that meant that people didn't hold on to it to save it. They spent it as fast as they could. And so the velocity of circulation was way more than the legal tender of the country. And so it established the need, it satisfied the need for currency, for exchanges to happen in the community. And that was extremely successful until the central government or the central bank closed it down because it was so unorthodox. But it was highly successful. They achieved building the bridges and the roads and maintaining the buildings, paying land tax to the rates for the local government, and it was very good. The other currency I'd like to talk about is the currencies that operated in the Middle Ages between about 1000 and 1300, or 1240, I think it was. They were created by either local bishops or local aristocracy, and they were reissued, they were withdrawn and reissued at intervals. And when they were reissued, the person who handed their currency in would get less back. And that was the aristocracy's way of taxing the people. Because the coinage that came back was going to get withdrawn, people spent it quickly, and it moved around and around in the economy very fast. And so the velocity of circulation was great. There was plenty of economic activities. People, again, just like in Egypt, they built for forever. And so that was the time of the building of the big cathedrals in Europe. And the proof of the pudding of how successful it was is came from London, where a cemetery was dug up that covered that whole time span. And basically what happened was that the people were very well fed, well educated. The status of women was very high. They could marry and divorce and inherit and all of those sorts of things. But after 1240, the aristocracy lost the right to issue currency. Only the king could, and it was in gold and silver. Same experiences with the Romans. And so what happened was there was a currency shortage, and all the exchanges, the vibrant economy just basically closed down. Not enough people coming to market because they couldn't afford to buy the food. The farmer couldn't make money, couldn't pay his rent, land rent, all of those sorts of things happened. So basically, there was famine after that. And then within the next 60 years, there was the plague, and the population of Europe just crashed. And the cemetery in London showed that between 1280 and about 1870, it took that long for the height of women to catch up. They lost, I think it was 13 centimeters fairly quickly in growth through the famine and so on, the privation. And they only got that at the late 1800s. And the men only got that after the First World War. And so it's in their bodies, the impact of how you run an economy, and that if you run an economy based on scarcity, not on what people are growing and what and on a decay currency, then you're going to get collapse. And you know, we are now in a situation where we need to be aware of this, and we can design currencies that don't collapse, that are have a charge against the administration of the economy, just like the Egyptians did, the Virgal people did, and the aristocracy of the Middle Ages did. They had a charge which meant that people moved the currency around really fast. It was an action, it wasn't saved. So I think I've sort of covered the basic three examples of, it's often called demurrage, and sometimes negative interest, but it's actually, the word interest is misleading. It's actually, it needs a charge against it for it to work, and it does work extremely well. So decaying currencies create societal stability, and that is something we can have in association with a trading currency. And there is no reason at all, except for our legislation, that we can't have a decaying currency side by side with our international trading currency in this country. And it would solve our problems of unemployment overnight. It would make our local markets vibrant. It would mean that everybody would want to be productive because the currency was available to buy and sell. And that's really a solution to major downturns. Yep.
Awesome. Thank you. Do we have any hands up? I can't see any hands up yet, so I'm going to take this opportunity to ask a question, which is, for there to be a national decaying currency, we need legislation change, but already people in communities and districts can have a voucher system, couldn't they? Or can you talk about how it could work on that, like, really community scale, and
yes,
is that legal?
Well, voucher systems are definitely legal. There are, you know, like the saving air points is like a voucher system. Getting a book from Whitcomb's book token, that's a voucher system. Petrol voucher is a voucher. So yes, we can have voucher systems. We can have voucher systems that decay. We can have voucher systems which are actually based on cards like FPOS, and the decay can actually be built into the FPOS system. It's just a question of creating these systems. And basically what I'm trying to get across is that economy is a creative design for how we want to have our society be. And we can create our economies in different ways, and we shouldn't be afraid of it. There is nothing concrete about the economy that our economists say is how it is. Actually, life's not like that. The economy is constantly morphing, and the economy we have at the moment is based on scarcity, and it's based on transferring the wealth from the many to the few. And we need to have our own designs of what we do, and that's why local currencies are important. And yes, but we don't have time to explain exactly how it's done, but yes, Phil probably might speak to that a little bit too. He's created a currency in Ashurst, and yeah, there's lots of small currencies around, and it's entirely possible to create local currencies, which could happen, say, in the Coromandel, and you could issue banknotes with artworks of local people, and be aware that the New Zealand government did research on voucher systems, I think it was last year, and found that only 50% of vouchers are ever redeemed, which means that if you create a voucher system, you can expect that most of the money that's invested into those vouchers never gets redeemed and becomes part of the community wealth. It's a really wonderful system for fundraising for a community, to set up voucher systems, which are loyalty systems for local businesses. They have to have the insight that actually it benefits them. But yeah, does that help?
That's great. Phil, there's a couple more minutes left of this session. Oh, we have a question from Miriam. I am going to unmute you. You just have to accept my invitation. There we go.
Okay, sorry, I've actually got 3 questions. I'll be quick. First of all, I just got a bit confused. You were saying that economy is based on scarcity and decaying currency brings on collapse. And then on the other hand, you're saying that this demurrage or negative interest brings a stable economy. I'm a bit confused on that one. That's the first question. Second question is...
Miriam, you might have to just choose. We'll start with one because we have to move on in a minute. So,
okay.
Do
you want me to do that?
Or do you want to choose your favourite?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I'll do that one.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think basically scarcity is involved in our creation of money as interest-bearing debt. That's a current system. The demurrage system copes with the volume of money available for transactions by it losing value over time, so people don't hang on to it, and so they do lots and lots of transactions. It goes around and around probably at least 10 times as fast as the local currency, and sometimes much more. So it creates abundance through velocity of circulation.
Yeah, okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it kind of does. So on the one side where there's scarcity, there's not the velocity, but where there's the negative interest, then there's the velocity. I understand that now. Yeah. Okay.
Awesome. And hey, Miriam, do you want to type your other couple of questions into the chat so we can come back to them in the end discussion?
Okay.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to seeing them. Cool. Next we have Chrys. Chrys.
Okie doke. Can you all hear me all right? Yep, cool. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to do this. Oh no, that's a bad idea. Share screen. Oh, okay, I can't. I'll just talk.
Oh no, you'll be able to share your screen. Let me just...
You should be able to do it now because we got bumped out before it's reset to the old, but yeah. You should be, yeah, great.
How does that look? And I might just do slideshow from beginning, and that should work. How's that look? Can everybody see that okay? Okay, so time banking. Time banking is many things, as I've learned. I've been working in the Addington Time Bank for a few years now, and I'm now helping with Timebanks of Canterbury, which is kind of a grouping of time banks to see what we can do to get things going in Canterbury. So it's a way to connect people. It's often used as a community development tool, and that's, I think, probably its strength and its most common use. We often talk about it as a way to help other people out, as a way to ask for help, and a way to give help. And a lot of people actually join the time bank with the idea that they might be able to help other people. That's their primary aim. Many people kind of compare it to barter or sharing, and it kind of is. But because it's a complementary currency, and at this stage it is not a complementary currency that decreases in value, as Bryan has just been talking about. But because it's a complementary currency, essentially, it makes barter easier. What we do is we trade in time credits. So if somebody helps you out, so say John mowed Sandra's lawn, well, he'll get a time credit for that. Sandra doesn't have to find something. She doesn't have to bake him a cake so that, you know, she doesn't have to find something that he wants. So that's one of the problems with barter, is you've got to find somebody who's got something you want and that they've got the skill that you need. So, you know, with a currency, you can kind of spread it around a bit more, so that John's mowed Sandra's lawn, but Linda can clean for John, and it can go right around the community. And in the sense, the ideal thing is when we close the loop, so the whole bunch of people help each other out, and everybody moves the time credit round, and it's all good. So it's sort of, it is like a currency. Whoops. What we find is that the idea, because time credits are kind of created a little bit like money, actually, and that is that somebody goes into debt in order to pay somebody a time credit. So that's how it works on the Timebank platform. So if you help me fix my bike, I create a time credit by paying you for the work you did for me. It just comes out of nowhere, but it's a debt for me, and it's a positive for you. And then if I don't have any time credits, if I have the time credits in my account already, when it just shrinks them like any other bank account. But if there's nothing there, then it just makes it a negative. So I guess at any time, all the debt in the system is adds up to, all the debt and all the positive values add up to zero in the system. So it feels a lot like money. And that means it's a little bit hard to argue about the idea of volunteering, or it can be hard. A lot of people, so IRD, for example, have made a ruling that people are not allowed to trade, in New Zealand, people are not allowed to trade the skills that they would normally be paid for, because they see that as avoiding tax. If you're volunteering, then some people don't feel like it's real volunteering because you're actually getting a time credit for doing it. And so it sort of has this tension. The community building aspect of it sometimes gets in the way of with the currency idea. And I guess it's like any currency, it has to be accepted by people. And it seems like often not enough people accept the currency, and there's a whole bunch of services that are quite hard to provide on this basis. Those that require a current license that has to be paid for in dollars, for example, like electricians tend to have to be practicing. They also, that's their job, because that's why they've got a certificate, and so you can't get an electrician to come and help you in a system like this. And people who have higher paid skills often don't particularly want to use a time credit kind of approach, because in a time bank, we always trade 1 hour for 1 hour. So, and that, you know, it's really different to the dollar. And it's really good from a community perspective. It's not quite so good from a currency perspective. And I guess it's sometimes a problem for funding applications because it can be hard to see. A lot of people ask, well, you know, why can't you just be paid in time credits when you do the work? And I guess there's this issue that it looks like something that gives you gain, when in fact actually it's probably more about what people gift. Sorry. I guess the other strength of time banks, let's go back to strengths, is that most of the active time banks around the world that are working well are the ones that have the most requests for help, which is kind of interesting too, because most people join a time bank to offer help, to give help. So one of the reasons that time banks often fall over is that people don't ask for help, or that they don't work well, is that people just have this thing about asking for help. It's not something we do. And I guess that's tied up with currencies and the idea of when you ask for something, you generally pay for it in a market economy. So, you know, we've got all these kind of mental barriers that can make it kind of interesting at times when you're a coordinator. And the idea of going into debt is also scary for some people. and it makes them resistant to asking. And we get around that often by gifting people time credits to help them ask, so that they've got a stash and they can start spending them and asking people for help. But, you know, and I've already talked about that. Pretty much all of the time banks that are working well in New Zealand have paid coordinators. And I know of one exception, and that's Otaki, which has got quite a strong group of people who are working it, and they're doing it as a sort of set of Facebook posts and trades, so they don't have to pay for their platform, and they don't have to, it's a much more active group. People don't have to log into the platform. And I guess, yeah, the reason why we do pay our coordinators is because quite a few services are not available, and probably never will be. It's pretty hard to exist only on time credits. It's a really unfair ask, actually. So those are the main things I wanted to cover, I think. I've raced across a bunch of stuff, but yeah, it would be good to maybe, you know, just go straight into questions. These are the things that, again, I've mentioned before. Oh yeah, here are some other things. In Littleton, prior in the earthquakes in Christchurch, their time bank was absolutely key to getting people help around the community where they needed it. So it was actually and that was largely because the coordinator knew who was who and what was what, and had it on her computer and could access it and put out calls for help and do all sorts of things. So it has actually been proven to be, and that's made it quite popular around Canterbury, and the Christchurch City Council have been quite keen to make things happen down here. All the same, a lot of our city is not covered, so at the moment we're thinking about how we might build a Christchurch-wide time bank. And I guess the other thing that it does do well is to help people contribute on a casual basis. So a lot of people shy away from volunteering on a regular basis. They don't want to necessarily turn up for the same 2 hours every week. It's much more helpful if they can do things a bit more intermittently. So we do get people who come for that particular purpose as well. So this is just a bit of a look at, this is how a platform looks, the Addington Time Bank platform, and it, you know, shows you some of the things that go on in the time bank. And I guess, yeah, questions would be a good thing.
I can't see any hands going up, actually, but I wonder, Sarah, I'm aware that in Raglan you also involved with the time bank there. I wonder if you have anything that you would add to that. Sorry, and I know this is out of the blue, but you've got a big thumbs up, so I'm going to, yeah, unmute you, give you the power. Here we go. And thank you very much, Chrys. And if people do have questions for Chrys, just send them through when you're ready.
Kia ora, everyone. Yeah, coming from Raglan Time Bank, and I guess what I could add, and with Chris's beautiful description, is that I'm really enjoying our connections this year since COVID. The connections that we're having with building a web of time banks around Aotearoa, and so sharing our resources, sharing our experiences and tips with orientations, getting new members on, including in workshops, events, but also in how to deal with this crazy time of, I've always thought that Time Bank is practicing for this time that we need, building community resilience, but practicing for a time when we need volunteers out on the ground running, just like Chrys said with the Christchurch earthquakes in Littleton. But this time with lockdown, it was really hard. I had so many of our members who were asking to help, but we couldn't physically go and help people because we had to stay distant. So we had to think on our feet and figure out how we could use Zoom and online ways to connect and check in with people, run online workshops like cooking classes and salsa classes. And in doing that online, it meant that we could join in other people. So I went to a sourdough workshop in Wellington, and we transferred credits from one time bank to another. So that's, I really enjoy the support of all the other Timebanks around Aotearoa. I just saw a question pop up, how many are there? Chrys, do you know, is there about 20?
Probably. Yeah, I'm not sure. I actually probably should, but I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, maybe 20.
Yeah. Half of them in Christchurch.
There's a website called Time Exchange NZ.
Yes.
Which I'm just working on updating at the moment. I think that's right. Timeexchange.co.nz. I think, let me just double check. Yep, that's right. And it has on it locate New Zealand time banks as one of your options. So, and here we are. 1, 2, 3. I won't count them. There are about 20.
Chrys, would you like to drop the link to that in the chat for us? And then I'm really keen to follow on Kina. I'm not sure exactly how to pronounce your name. I'm going to try to find you to unmute you. Here you are.
Kia ora tātou. Apologies for being late, so I missed the introduction and everything. I just was chipping in that I work for Wesley Community Action in the Wellington region, and yeah, we started the Porirua Time Bank about a year ago and work really closely with the Heart Time Bank as well, which, you know, they're really awesome pieces of technology for communities that we work with who don't have a lot of financial resource to get the things that they need. But I really liked what you said, Chrys, about that. You said the most effective time banks, I think, are the ones where there's lots of requests for help. We work in a really, in Porirua East is the heart of our time bank, which is a really low income area, lots of people who don't have paid employment. And that's our big problem, is that they're such a generous community. That's why we brought the time bank in, because we knew there was so much exchange already happening, and how do we amplify that? But our problem, the time bank's problem, I should say, is that nobody can think of to ask for anything. So they're always just offering. And so we've had to sit down a lot and have really cool conversations about, come on, you know, there must be something that you want to ask for, that you need in your life. So it's just interesting kind of.
It's interesting because I've got a great person I work with in Addington, and she does quite a lot of work with people to work out how they might, you know, to see if she could kind of provide things that help close that loop. So she's always picking flowers out of her garden and selling them for time credits to people who give a lot. And she's always, she organised a fantastic concert from someone who told her that there was no way they could help anybody out because they were too old, but she's a pianist. And she did a house concert, and a whole bunch of people went and paid time credits to go to that concert. And so this woman could then go and ask for help for other things. But it wouldn't have happened without Sandy actually sitting there with her and making it happen. So it's a really nice story. But those closing the loop, what I think of as closing the loop, finding out what people want, or thinking about what you might be able to get people to accept or to buy, can be quite fun in some respects.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
I was interested in what you said about the Otaki time bank and how successful it is. And so you're saying that most of the other time banks are working on a certain platform that's fixed. And this one is on Facebook. So are you guys or other time banks maybe exploring changing over, or?
No, not at this stage, because there are advantages to the platform as well. It's just that it costs us money to have it, and that's why Otaki went off it, because they couldn't afford it. They lost their funding, and we could still be working on Facebook and use Community Weaver to record the exchanges. So with Otaki, they just do it with a spreadsheet. Somebody goes through and harvests all the trades, and it all gets put onto a spreadsheet, and people get told what they've got, you know, what their time credit balance is.
Would you like to add to that, Deirdre?
Yeah, well, I actually founded the Otaki Time Bank, and it's been through several phases. It did have a paid worker at one stage, but it's very important to choose a paid worker who's got a lot of people skills and those networking skills. And they've also got to have internet skills as well. So it depends on the person who's running it, and it actually is down to a very few people are taking it at the moment. Yeah, that private Facebook group. Well, they're going, but just it's very much smaller than it was when we had a full-time or part-time worker. Much better to have one, really.
Yes.
Awesome.
People that count.
Thank you for that. And so maybe just to finish this section on Kenna's question, which was, I'm sorry, I still don't know if that's how I meant to pronounce your name. That's right, awesome. Is if you are involved with a time bank somewhere, give us some hands up on your profile. Show us your hands. How many people here are involved with time banks? Maybe only 1, 2. Martin, I can't see your hand. Awesome. Oh, there's a few of you. That's cool. Well, hopefully after this there'll be some more.
Can I just say one thing, and that is, Kenna, I don't have Porirua on my Time Exchange New Zealand website, and so I need to contact you. I'll talk to you in the chat.
Awesome. Cool. Moving on to savings pools. Phil.
There we go. Kia ora tātou. I'm going to share a screen here and go through a little presentation I put together. This is a topic that I've done quite a bit, but it seems like I always find something new to say, and I always get some new questions. So I always enjoy talking to people about savings pools. So the basic thing about a savings pool is that it's a group of people, and we say that it's an informal group. It doesn't need to be any sort of actually body corporate or registered entity. And in fact, there are a lot of reasons why it's better not to do this. It's just a group of people with common goals, putting their money together so that they can do a few things. One of the most obvious reasons is so that people can borrow without paying interest to banks or other types of financial lenders. But it's also because people want to see their money going to some sort of tangible good in their communities. And a lot of times people put money in the bank and they get this funny feeling that what that money is actually doing or supporting may not align with their values. And so it's very common when you hear people's reasons for joining or forming pools that they say, I really wanted my money to express my worldview and my values. So that's a big thing too, and especially in these days where bank deposits, term deposits, and the like are earning very scant interest. And if people have a bit of a nest egg and it's sitting in a bank, they're often not really getting much of a return, if any, on it. And it really makes quite a bit of sense to them to get that money out amongst their community and doing some actual good that they can see and hear about. So the group of people will get together and they decide with a consensus decision-making process how to loan out their funds. And the people that borrow money from the pool are, instead of paying interest, just have to put an equal amount of money back into the pool for an equal amount of time. And we call this reciprocity. And the reciprocity is simply to measure the members' money in the pool or taken out of the pool for the amount of time that it's either in or out of the pool. It makes the accounting simple. It keeps everything very fair, very transparent. And over time, if you talk to pool members, they all seem to have similar stories about the satisfaction it gives them to see these things taking place and to know that the wealth in their community is actually growing instead of being sucked away by these banks. And to a lot of you, this may sound familiar because we used to actually have institutions that worked this way. They were the building societies and the earlier credit unions. And these were actually financial institutions that took in people's money on deposit and then would make loans, most often for people to build or buy houses. Another variation on this is quite common in the migrant communities around New Zealand and around the world, actually. And these are called lending circles. And this would be a group of people who get together, put their money into a common account, and then nominate one person to get that chunk of money and give them a certain amount of time, usually 1 year, to pay it back. And then a next person gets the same chunk of money, gets a year to pay it back, and they go around the circle until everyone has had an opportunity to use that pool of money and pay it back. They're also called, sometimes they're called Rotary lending clubs. The New Zealand example actually traces its history to something called the Yacht Bank of Sweden. And Bryan, who you all heard from about half an hour ago, and his partner Joe went to Sweden early in the 2000s and met some of the founders and directors of the Yacht Bank and talked to them about their experience in setting this up and how and why it worked so well. And they came back to New Zealand and worked out a model of how this could be done on a small scale at a community level by groups of people themselves without needing to set up an actual financial institution and jumping through all those hoops and all the regulatory issues and money and skills involved. And there are now dozens of pools around New Zealand. We don't actually have a number, but it could be upwards of 100 by now. But yeah, lots of pools, lots of success stories, lots of it's been a sort of a little growth industry for us. So the way they work is really pretty simple. A group of people get together, they decide they want to form one of these. They will have an initial meeting and sign some basic agreements with one another. And these agreements just say that they agree to work for these common goals, to keep one another's details private, to respect the integrity of the decisions made, to use consensus and nonviolent decision-making techniques, so on and so forth. The pool will have 2 or more of the members open a bank account with a minimum 2 to sign. And this is also a step for transparency to make sure that no one person is in control of the funds. Someone then will will keep the records, the bookkeeping for the pool. And this can be someone in the pool, or it can be someone external who's got some experience doing this. And we actually have a team of volunteer record keepers around the country who are doing this on behalf of several pools. So you don't have to do this yourself if you're starting a pool, but it's pretty simple to do. And there are spreadsheet examples and then more complicated ways of doing it. The members, once they've got things rolling and have an account, start putting money into the account, and then they can start applying to borrow the money as it accumulates. And most groups tend to be geographically located. So they'll start with maybe some people in a single street, or some people that know each other socially or through a common workplace. And so they tend to be geographically close to one another, and they might get together once a month or so for a shared meal and a catch-up and to talk pool business. There are pools that are geographically dispersed and don't have the opportunity to do this, and they meet online. A lot of them will use tools like Lumio to do their decision-making and to record the pool business. So when a pool member wants to get a loan from the group, they just ask And the common way of doing this is to put together a proposal. The proposal can be a very simple thing. It can be verbally expressed at an in-person meeting. It can be something they draft and circulate by email or post to the group on whatever platform they're using. And they just need to let everybody know the amount, what the money is going to be used for, how long they're going to be paying it back, and if there's any security involved. And the group will then take this information, possibly ask some questions or nut out a few details, and then they'll take some sort of vote or decision on the proposal. And if everybody agrees with it, then the borrower will sign an agreement with the rest of the pool saying, you know, basically just agreeing to the terms and noting that, you know, they've got the money and they'll be paying it back over a certain amount of time. In a lot of pools, the record keeper will have a standard agreement template that they use and just fill in the blanks and note the details that a borrower is using. The borrower then just follows the terms of the agreement, makes their payments, and then at the end of the term, it's a done deal. And this is all calculated in terms of what we call savings points. A savings point is just the accounting shorthand for $1 for 1 month. And that just works in both directions. So if people have put money in the pool, the money they've saved in the pool adds to their points balance. If somebody has borrowed from the pool, then the money owing subtracts from their points balance. So you can have a positive or a negative points balance. The points are just used to calculate what a borrower needs to repay, not just to contribute the money back that they borrowed, but an equal amount of money for an equal amount of time, so that others in the pool have the same opportunity to borrow. And that's the key of the whole thing. With the reciprocity, it means that the pool doesn't get stuck, that the money keeps coming back in, and that everybody gets the same opportunity to use the money in the pool. Without the reciprocity, it would be quite easy for funds in the pool to get stuck and the opportunities for people to borrow it to go down over time. So reciprocity is really quite important. So here's a graphical example. This is a real simple one. This is saying somebody borrowed $150 from the pool and they make two $150 payments in the following months. So they've actually paid back the amount of the loan and then that same amount again. And as of the third month, they now have a balance in the pool of $150 that belongs to them. They have the option of taking this out of the pool or leaving it in. If they leave it in, it will start accumulating more points for them. You can also have a member who has been putting money into the pool. In this example, somebody put in a fairly large lump sum and kept adding to it. After 3 years, they had enough in there. They were able to ask for a similar amount in a loan from the pool and use that to buy property. And then they only needed a term of about 5 years to repay that and pay the reciprocity, because they had already banked quite a few savings points. So the green is just showing their positive balance of reciprocity. The orange is showing the negative reciprocity and how that goes away until the end of the repayment cycle, because they had already earned all the reciprocity beforehand. They didn't need to pay back as much reciprocity in the second part of the term. So it's just a different example for how somebody could have money in the pool, and that would give them an advantage later on if they wanted to borrow. And then pools usually will ask for some sort of security for larger amounts of money. It depends on the pool and it depends on the amount. And it often is just a function of how well everyone knows each other and how comfortable they are with the amount in question and the amount of time. So some of the ways they do this are to just purchase the item on the borrower's behalf and then transfer ownership when the agreement is satisfied. Another thing a pool can do is register a security interest over an unrelated asset. And this could be a car, it could be some sort of an appliance, something with some value that's considered durable. So at least over the life of the agreement, that asset isn't expected to go away. Another way that pools can ask for security is to bring a guarantor into the agreement. So that's just if somebody is willing to stand for the borrower and say, if they run into strife, have trouble with payments, I'll put my hand up and be willing to put the money in that they said they would pay. And then the big one would be is if somebody's actually buying property with a pool loan, the pool can hold a mortgage over the piece of property. And they do this by having one or more members of the pool act as agents, and everything is executed through a lawyer, and it's quite straightforward. It doesn't cost a whole lot of money. And so these are a few resources. I think Ruby has put these into the shared document that people can look at after the fact. And it's just looking at the Living Economy's website with some of the resources we have available, frequently asked questions, some document templates and handbooks on savings pools. And I've also got a link in there to Common Good, which is a really interesting sort of twist on the savings pool concept, which can be used for social investment and community development and a lot of really cool things. So stay tuned, and we might have one of those up and running in New Zealand one of these days.
Thank you, Phil. That was really great. I noticed that Kina had to go, and she also offered some information and a video around time banks and stuff. If people feel like watching that afterwards, we'll include it also in our Google Sheet that we will share with everyone at the end. So you can go over the information in your own time, because it's a lot to take in.
We'll probably just have space for one question before we move on to the next subject. Does anyone have a question about savings pool for Phil? Awesome. I just want to say, don't be disheartened if you don't understand on the first go. I'm not gonna lie, I went to had three conversations with someone, with Bryan, about savings pools before the concept really started making sense for me. But really thank you so much for coming and bringing that here, Phil, because it is quite a huge and revolutionary thing. I've seen what it does with people's lives, and I also just want to name, sometimes it can look a little bit like one of those like funny pyramid schemes with the lotus circles that got busted up a few years ago, but it's absolutely not. It's been checked out by IRD and by all these great people.
FMA.
Oh, FMA. What's that?
The Financial Markets Authority. They're the big ones.
Yeah. The big ones. I meant the FMA. Anyway, over to you, Sarah.
Here we go. Can everyone hear me all good, I hope? Kia ora koutou katoa, ngā mihi nui kia koutou, ko Sarah toku ingoa, and I am zooming into you all today from Te Pokapū Taio or Whaingaroa, or Whaingaroa Environment Centre here in Raglan. And I'm not at home. This is the Whaingaroa Environment Centre. I'm actually in it, and we are a hub for a whole lot of projects in our community, including Raglan Timebank, as I spoke about before, for the last 8 years here in Raglan. And more recently, this year, we opened up a tool library. So it's a great pleasure to have the opportunity to come. Thank you, Anne and Ruby, for organising and coordinating, and thanks to everyone who has come along to listen and learn. It's a cool opportunity to share some ideas and experiences that we've had here about the tool library and the greater sharing economy. And I was thinking, I often think about this documentary I watched a few years ago called The Third Industrial Revolution. It's on YouTube, and it's all about how the internet and then technology is like the revolution of today in our current time, much like the invention of the motor car or the light bulb and things like that. So there's one sentence in this doco stood out for me. I mean, I remembered lots of it, but mainly this sentence, and it was around our parents and grandparents, or my parents and grandparents, since the time of the motor car, have thought about freedom, gaining freedom when we have ownership of things, like, for example, a lawnmower or a car, so that you could drive whenever you want to or mow the lawns whenever you want to. But the current generation now find their freedom in just having access to things. So not necessarily ownership over them, but access to them. So they don't actually need to have a car. They could just have an Uber account or a bus card, or join City Hop in Auckland, or other sorts of car sharing apps in community. So the freedom comes from just having access to them. And likewise, a whole street doesn't all need to own a lawnmower to be able to mow their lawns. They just have to have access to a lawnmower or a system to share them. So that is like a tool library, essentially. So whether it's tool library, clothing libraries, toy libraries, carpools or jar pools, all of these things are part of a sharing economy, and sharing resources has lots of different benefits. My favorite, well, I don't actually have a favorite. First up, I wanted to talk about the sharing resources actually reducing the amount of like the stuffication around us. And there's lots of things that they might be wasted in the sense of that they're not being utilized. Like, I think of most of the clothes in my wardrobe aren't necessarily being utilized. Spare cars, that's why they go into a car sharing thing. So it's moving away from this linear approach of take, make, and then waste. So we're taking resources out of the ground, we're making these into things, and then we buy them, ship them, package them into a shiny store. We use them, they might sit in storage, we might use them again, and eventually they're disposed of. So a sharing economy switches that straight line, take, make, waste, into more of a circle, which is similar. You may have also heard of it as like a circular economy. So for example, these clothes are from a clothing swap and also from an op shop. So two different ways that things can circle around and share. I've got a jar here that came out of a jar library, or we have an ugly mug library here in Raglan in lots of cafes. So if you don't have a reusable cup, you can borrow a cup, and that means all of the energy gone into a single-use coffee cup to get it to you, and then also to dispose of it, doesn't need to happen. You can just borrow that cup, use it again and again, and then someone else can use it again and again. And it keeps going around in the community. You just have to make sure that you bring it back. So the added bonus, other than this environmental impact of not having as many natural resources extracted from the earth to make things, is also, and I love dearly, the sharing of things and being parts of initiatives like libraries of all sorts of things, is the potential for interactions that we get to have with others. So there's this joy in joining with other human connection and neighborliness. There's this fun in learning with others, like doing workshops and learning how to use these tools, and meeting like-minded people. So when I started doing sewing lessons, I met all of these other crafty sewing people that I would never have known existed until I went into that space. So that was really neat. And there's also, similar to the connections that we get in Timebank, when you're joining up with different community projects, you have this feeling of safety because you know more people in your community and you know your neighbours, and you have a stronger sense of belonging and community. And I guess it enhances more wider resilience within a town or a city. Financially also, it is really great to see people joining in, similar to the savings pool idea that Phil was talking about. And we do have we've got 3 savings pools here in Raglan. This idea of joining into a collective pool to use the same tools and resources, and see that these opportunities are shared by everyone. I really like that, more than just one person. So when I pay my membership fee, $40 for the year, I don't do it because I think of what I can get out of it, but I do it to support a system which will be then helping loads of others to have access to things they might not normally have access to. So it's beyond just thinking I'm paying this thing for myself, but I'm paying to help a system work and function and help various people in our community to have that access and that freedom to do the things they need to do. So I did have a couple of examples of things that I wanted to show you. I didn't have slides, but I wanted to bring in some favorite things, and I wondered if you guys could guess what they might be. This is a gardening tool that I've just learned, and it's one of our most popular items. So it's a small item that's in our tool library or tool bank, and it's like an epic weeding tool, and you just bring it along the ground like this. So this is one thing. Yes, a nawashi, yes. Much bigger. This, does anyone know what this might be? This, I didn't know what it was, and someone came in and asked for the leaf blower, and I, oh, it goes that way, see? And I didn't even know how to turn it on. So this was something that I really struggled with because I didn't know how to work it. And luckily there were other people around who were volunteering and part of the tool library that could show me how to use this. So this thing I don't really know how to use, but this thing I do really know how to use. So this is a sewing machine. It's an oldie but a goodie. It's a metal one. It's the Benina 802. And it's probably very scary for some people and don't know how to use it, and that's fine. We use, sorry for dragging my chair, that's probably annoying noise. We can access lots of people who know how to use different tools. So I got someone to help me turn on the leaf blower, and I can help someone use the sewing machine and get started on that. My last mystery tool, because I think it looks really fun, but I don't know what you use it for. It's got a really long stick. Does anyone know what this might be used for? A cultivator. Thanks, Chris. Chris is all over the tools. So we've got lots of garden, so that's all running in the soil, I guess, and kind of like loosening things up. We've got lots of garden tools in our shed, and lots of building tools. And we're looking at and getting some sewing machines in there. When I visited the Wellington Time Bank a couple of weeks ago, they said their sewing machines were one of the most popular, did I say Time Bank? Tool Bank? Tool Library, sorry. I visited a Time Bank and the Tool Library in Wellington. And they said their sewing machines were one of their most popular items to rent out, which was really, really cool to see. And they had lots of paint and paint tools. We have in Wellington, they had a room in the community house, and we have a standalone shed. So we had to get that built and get a whole lot of tools. Sometimes they donated, sometimes you use funding to buy those tools. And we have a paper system with memberships where people pay our annual or half yearly rate. And I know the one in Wellington, they use an online system, so people can kind of put things in their cart, and the volunteer person in the tool library will get them all together, and when someone comes to pick them up, they can. So we have different community rates as well. If you have a community services card, you can get it cheaper for your 6-month or annual membership. And we're also looking at doing some workshops and stuff like a wahine know-how class to get more women working with building tools. And we're tapping into the Time Bank community and the awesome talents in there to welcome on board guardians and things like that to help facilitate the tool library and advocate for it further in our community. I welcome more questions if you want to know specifically how it works or how we set this one up. I know I've talked about big picture stuff here, but yeah, welcome your questions. Hope that was all right timing.
Any questions from the group? Let me see. Oh yeah, Elspeth.
Hi Sarah, it's good to see you here. I was wondering how you managing it. Like some of the other ones talked about whether there's a paid role, if you get a community grant to get it started, if it's voluntarily run, like who manages the memberships and the loaning process?
Oh, can you hear me now? Hopefully, yeah. Thanks, Elspeth. Good to see you. So we have one of our other coordinators here in the Whangaroa Environment Centre. He runs the Backyard Bounty and all the garden projects. So the tool library is one of his. So he has a paid role that is like coordinating and has set up all of the systems. We had funding from our local community board from years ago. So it's been talked about within the centre for many years, and finally it's happened, and Jade's done an awesome job at getting across the line and getting the shed built. So we had a community grant, and talking to him, he recommended like not to spend all of it on tools, and maybe to create have some space to create a wish list. So once you've engaged with the community, you can do a survey, find out what tools people want, so that you can, give people what they want, basically. And we do have volunteer guardians who, as I said before, advocate for the tool library and help with any questions or volunteers. And at the Environment Centre, our centre hosts will manage doing like the membership sign-ups and getting people their tools. I think in the Wellington one, they have set times. So the tool library was open on a Saturday morning, whereas people can come anytime that the Environment Centre here is open. Yeah. So a little bit of Timebank, a little bit of, we're going to pay our Guardians Timebank credits, and a little bit of paid role as well. Thanks.
Oh, that was really great, Sarah. Awesome. Yeah, I think that brought up a lot of questions and inspiration by the look of the chat window. Let's see if there's any more questions. No. Great. Oh, did someone put their hand up there? Yes, Meg Evans, go ahead.
Tools. I love that idea. I'm in a very tiny community. Is there a is there a numbers thing that you can say it's probably going to work if you've got a certain number of people, or does that really not matter? And why have you bought tools rather than, I mean, where I am, people have so much. So do you not tap into what is already there that's really not being used all the time, like a lot of the sharing that goes on? So why did you elect to buy stuff rather than just to gather?
Great questions. Thank you. The first question around numbers, I don't think numbers may restrict you. If it's similar to that of Timebank, what I see is it's not about how many people you have in your membership, it's how active and engaged they are. So even if you had 5 people switching in a neighborhood and swapping, then that's awesome. If they're reaping the benefits and engaging and loving it, then that's way better than having 200 people signed up and not doing any swapping, right? So yeah, I don't think a number, and maybe a smaller community word gets round easier to know that that's there, and you're more inclined to connect, because it could be kind of intimidating in our bigger cities to go along, and you might meet someone in the tool library that lives way away, where here in Raglan we're going to connect with people in our community. And your second question, I'm not too sure why they bought tools. I think that there was funding allocated to it a few years ago, and we wanted to get it up and running. I think we have some donated stuff now, and I think that having things that don't require too much maintenance, having like good new quality things. We've got about 10 sewing machines that are left over from when we were doing Bagot sewing bees before the plastic bag ban. So they've just been sitting in the Environment Centre, and now they can be in the tool library. So that's been a really cool resource, but we need to get them going again. So that's my job to figure out if they go still. So maintaining things is really important with all of the tools. You want to make sure that they don't get used and abused, and they get some TLC as well.
Do you have about that? Do you have a system or some checking about how the goods are returned after they've been used? And
yes, so we've got when we return, we check when it goes out and say good condition, and when it comes in, we check it. And the different tiered tools, so the power tools, they have a bigger bond than the smaller gardening tools when it goes out. And Jade, the coordinator, will check the power tools, and because not all of our volunteers are clued up on every single tool in the tool shed of what it should look like. And so we also, when they return, we ask them for their tool story and get a bit of story around what they used it for and anything they want to go on their wish list. So there's a really cool exchange. It's less transactional. It's more a conversation when they bring it back. So I recommend doing that.
Can you explain the bond system? What are you actually asking?
Yeah, so when anyone pays a membership, so it's $40 for the year or $25 for half the year, and a lesser rate if your community services card. But then also when you rent out your items, and we've got 3 different tiers, it's $10, or $20 basically for the different tiers of tools, and when you return it, you get that money back. But there is a little bit of a conversation at the moment about maybe just having your bond stay in there. And so rather than always having to have cash every time you come every weekend and get another gardening tool, just keep your bond in here for the year, for example. So that's another suggestion if anyone's going to set one up. That doesn't have to happen every time. Yeah.
Cool.
Good question. Thank you.
Very great questions. Thank you so much, Sarah. That was wonderful. I see that we have about 9 minutes left, and I want to open up the conversation a little bit more widely to maybe some other projects that people are involved in already. So things we haven't talked about yet tonight. Or, there's different people from all over the country in this group. If you just want to say, hey, we're here and we have this, and if you want to get in touch with me, that's also cool. So I just want to mention that recently I learned about Buy Nothing. So that's something that I hadn't heard of. My friend who lives in Island Bay in Wellington is part of that, and she's using it on a weekly basis, getting to know people, and just, instead of throwing things away or putting things on Trade Me, it doesn't always work out. Like, people don't actually value it anyways, and then you can really help someone out. So you're basically just gifting things, good things, and it's the same as with the time banks and everything else. You basically can ask for things, and you can give away things. And I was also thinking, somebody was asking the question, if the community is too small and we're not thinking of starting a tool bank, you could also just do it on a group like Buy Nothing, and people also borrow things there. So if you need a tool, you can request a tool, and someone in your neighborhood might lend it to you, because the Buy Nothing groups work on a very local scale. So it's either by neighborhood or like adjacent neighborhoods, which, as you also pointed out, Sarah, it just makes that you get to know your neighbors when you interact with them about those things. So that's an example. So yeah, I'm wondering if anyone has anything to contribute that we haven't heard of, that is something that's really cool that they know about. Or if you just want to...
Meg, tell us. I saw that hand go up. You should be, I've changed the settings now, so I think you should just be able to unmute. Oh no, there we go. Now you should just be able to unmute yourself whenever you're ready to talk.
I've just arrived in this wee community. I'm right down at Taieri Beach, south of Dunedin. And I came here knowing I want community. So my whole way of thinking is, how do I create it? So just today, funnily enough, I printed some little brochures. I'm going to run a cafe, and I'm calling it Tuesdays at 10 because that's the only time it's going to be open. And I'm asking people to bring their own mug, and I'm going to give them a hot drink. And I love baking, so whatever I've got. So they will have that. And I'm asking for koha or exchange. And I've sort of termed it, this is a place for locals only. It's not for anyone else. And that we come together and we chat, and maybe we plan and maybe we create. And that's why I love what you're doing, because I can now raise lots of ideas. And that we do help each other. I mean, I'm on my own and I've arrived here knowing nobody, and I've needed so much help, and I've gone and asked for it. And in return, I bake and I distribute my baking to everybody. But I just think there's so much potential for communities to start connecting and helping each other. And I just love what you're talking about, because I just hope we can get some of those ideas happening here. But no, we just need a lot of energy from certain people to get things started. And look, it's my little Kappa idea. I've spoken about it. It's going to start on the 3rd of November. But lots of people are interested. I don't know what's going to happen. It doesn't worry me whether they turn up or not. I'm going to be here anyway. But I just want to start people. We don't have any place where we are that we can actually meet. So yeah, that's my idea.
Thanks, Meg. That sounds really wonderful. I wish I was closer. And yeah, you start small, right? And you're just there and you see who shows up.
Yeah.
Cool. Polly was saying that freecycle.org is international and great at being able to divert stuff from the landfill, very active in many places. So that's something we should add to our list. So yeah, there will be a list of resources that people can look at in their own time. Anybody else got something?
Bryan has a comment.
Yeah, Meg, the glue that binds community together is interdependency, and all of these currency ideas are about interdependency. And if you were a member of a savings pool, you've immediately got an interdependent community around you. And the more you get involved with these projects and help create them, the more you are bound into a really tight community. And I've visited people who are in communities who say, I know my back is covered even more than it is by my birth family, you know. It's that solid, real love. So
that's what I would love to do. Yeah. Lovely, thank you. And look, I absolutely know I need the people around me, and it's very interesting. Every time I go, well, I could actually just go and buy something, I go, no, it's much better if I go and ask, because it's building this interdependence.
But the reciprocity side of it, you know, you do your baking, and that's great, and that's as important. You know, it's a two-way thing always.
Yeah.
Cool. Do you, Elspeth? You can unmute yourself now, Elspeth. Can you?
She doesn't know you're talking to her.
No, you can't. You should be able to do it now.
Yeah, is that me? That's me on. Okay, actually, I just had a question about the interdependency, because a lot of these ideas seem really beautiful and amazing, and I've seen lots of examples in my life where they work really well, but I was thinking especially about the larger saving pool and things like that. And I just know from in general, without wanting to be a really negative person on this thing, but there are times when people don't behave responsibly or accountably to each other. And I was wondering if any of these systems have got inbuilt accountabilities or ways that projects can get saved. If, for example, somebody, you know, borrowed money and then didn't pay it back, or, you know, fell out with some people and something happened, has anyone got kind of an obvious answer for how that can be kind of built into the system of it from the start, so that you don't have kind of high hopes and then something tears the whole project down or something? So, hoping to learn from intergenerational knowledge here.
I've been involved in savings pools right from the very first one, and to my knowledge, nobody in more than 10 years has lost a cent. So we do not have those breakdowns. What we do have is sometimes people are unable to meet their agreements or their commitments, and so there's a renegotiation happens, and so they might get a payment holiday for 3 months while they get back on their feet or whatever. It's a much more human thing than you have with a bank, and it really does work. You know, I'm in 2 different internet-based pools, and we're helping people who need to travel overseas for tangis, people who are setting up market gardens for local community markets. There's lots and lots, you know, there's actually dozens and dozens of things, and it's all about what they want to do. One couple went off to China and, you know, got help with their finances while they were sort of having difficulties with money flowing through to China and back again and all of that. There's lots of, yeah, so it does work, and it has been going for a long time, and there are, I don't know, just at a guess, probably a couple of thousand people in pools around the country. Nobody waves flags and says, I'm in a pool and you must do this or that. It's all one of the agreements you sign, and all those safeguards you're talking about are in those agreements. And you are facing everybody. You've made those commitments, and everybody knows they've made the same commitments, and it works. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, this brings us to 8 o'clock. So as you will see in the chat, Anne has shared with you the Google Doc, and actually as people have been talking about things, we've been adding things in there. If you have other things you think that need to be in there that you don't see in there, please feel free to send them through. This Google Doc will say a bit of a living document. It will be on the internet forever now, so you can keep coming back to it. There's plenty of contact details in there too if you want to reach out to people and have more